The quiet suburban neighborhood of Willow Lane was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. The streets were lined with perfectly manicured lawns, white picket fences, and houses that looked eerily similar. Children played in the yards, and neighbors waved from their porches. It was the epitome of normalcy, until the fire trucks came screaming down the street, their sirens shattering the peaceful silence. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. Most of the neighborhood was at work or running errands, leaving the streets unusually empty. The only sound was the faint rustling of leaves in the autumn breeze. Then came the smell of smoke, subtle at first but growing stronger with each passing minute. By the time the first flames appeared, licking hungrily at the windows of the house at the end of the street, it was too late to stop what had already been set in motion. The house belonged to the Millers, a young couple who had moved in just a year earlier. Sarah Miller, a petite woman with long, dark hair and a warm smile, had been the picture of happiness when she first arrived. She was often seen pushing a stroller down the sidewalk, her newborn daughter, Lily, cooing softly as they went. Her husband, Mark, was a kind but reserved man who worked long hours as an accountant. To everyone on Willow Lane, they seemed like the perfect family. But something had changed in Sarah in the weeks leading up to the fire. Neighbors noticed her behaving strangely. She wandered the streets at odd hours, muttering under her breath. Her once bright eyes grew hollow and distant, as if she were no longer fully present. She stopped taking Lily for walks, and the curtains of the Miller house remained drawn at all times. When neighbors asked if everything was all right, Sarah forced a smile and assured them she was fine. No one believed her. The fire department arrived just in time to save Sarah and Lily from the blaze. The house was engulfed in flames, the heat so intense it could be felt from across the street. Firefighters burst through the front door to find Sarah standing in the middle of the living room, arms outstretched as if welcoming the inferno. She held Lily in one arm, the baby wrapped tightly in a blanket. Sarah's face was eerily calm, her eyes glazed as she stared into the flames. She didn't struggle or scream as the firefighters pulled her and the baby to safety. She simply whispered something under her breath, a phrase that sent chills down the spines of everyone who heard it. She told me to do it. The words were barely audible, but enough to make the firefighters exchange uneasy glances. Sarah was rushed to the hospital, treated for minor burns and smoke inhalation. Lily, miraculously, was unharmed. Mark, who had been at work during the fire, arrived at the hospital in a panic. He was relieved to find his daughter safe, but his relief turned to horror when he saw the state of his wife. Sarah was no longer the woman he had married. Her eyes were wild and unfocused, her voice trembling as she repeated the same phrase over and over again. She told me to do it. When doctors asked who she meant, Sarah's face twisted into a grotesque smile. "The woman in the mirror," she said. "She's been watching me. She's been waiting." Mark didn't know what to do. He tried to comfort her, but she recoiled from his touch, her eyes filled with fear and hatred. The doctors diagnosed her with severe psychosis and recommended she be committed to a psychiatric facility. Mark, devastated but desperate to protect his daughter, agreed. He packed up what little remained of their lives and moved out of state with Lily, leaving Sarah behind. But the story didn't end there. The house on Willow Lane was left a charred shell, its blackened walls and broken windows a stark reminder of the tragedy. The neighborhood tried to move on, but unease lingered. People whispered, their rumors growing louder with each passing day. They said Sarah had been possessed, that something dark and malevolent had taken hold of her. They spoke of strange occurrences in the days before the fire. Lights flickering in the Miller house, faint whispers through the walls, footsteps in empty rooms. One neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, claimed she had seen a figure standing in the Miller's window late one night, a woman with long, dark hair and a pale, gaunt face. But when she looked again, the figure was gone. Another neighbor, Mr. Thompson, swore he had heard Sarah arguing with someone in the days before the fire, though no one else had been in the house. After Sarah was committed, the rumors only grew. The staff at the psychiatric facility reported strange behavior. Sarah would spend hours staring at the wall, lips moving as if in conversation with someone only she could see. At night, she screamed in her sleep, her voice echoing through the halls. When questioned, she would only say one thing: she's still here. Months passed, and the neighborhood slowly began to heal. The charred remains of the Miller house were torn down, and a new family moved in, eager for a fresh start. But it wasn't long before they too experienced strange occurrences. Emily, the new homeowner, dismissed the stories as superstition until the night she saw the woman in the mirror. It was late, and Emily was alone in the bathroom, brushing her teeth before bed. She glanced up at the mirror and froze. Reflected in the glass was not her own face, but that of a woman with long, dark hair and hollow, sunken eyes. The woman's lips curled into a sinister smile, and she raised a hand pointing directly at Emily. Emily screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over a bottle of shampoo. When she looked again, the reflection was her own. She told her husband, but he dismissed it as a trick of the light. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She began avoiding the mirrors in the house. At night, she heard whispers, faint and indistinct, but undeniably there. One night, as she lay in bed, a voice whispered, soft and insidious, from everywhere and nowhere at once. "She told me to do it." Emily bolted upright, heart pounding. She turned to wake her husband, but he was already sitting up, his face pale, eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Before Emily could respond, the sound of breaking glass echoed through the house. They rushed downstairs to find the living room mirror shattered. Shards of glass scattered across the floor. Written in the dust on the wall above the mirror were 3 words: "I'm still here." The new family moved out less than a week later, leaving the house on Willow Lane empty once again. The neighbors avoided it, crossing the street to steer clear of its ominous presence. The house remained unsold, its windows dark, its yard overgrown. As for Sarah, she remains in the psychiatric facility, her condition unchanged. She spends her days staring at the wall, lips moving in silent conversation. When asked who she's talking to, she simply smiles and says, "The woman in the mirror." And sometimes, late at night, the staff swear they hear another voice, a soft, sinister whisper, answering her back.